Welcome to This is Getting Old, Moving Towards an Age-Friendly World. I'm your host, Melissa Batchelor, and today we're going to be talking about nursing home placement during COVID. And I'm joined by Kenya Beard. Welcome, Kenya.
Thank you.
And so before we get started, maybe just introduce yourself and then we'll dive into things people need to know before they put a loved one in a nursing home during COVID.
Definitely. So I'm Kenya Beard. I am the Associate Provost for Social Mission and Academic Excellence at Chamberlain University. I'm also an adult geri acute care nurse practitioner.
Awesome. And today you're talking to me more as a family caregiver.
Yes, I am.
Okay. So let's just talk about, why don't you just start by telling the story of what you experienced.
So my experience with rehab facilities, AKA nursing homes, my mother was, years ago, my mother had fractured her ankle, a comminuted fracture. So she has plates, screws, pins in her foot, and she now and then would have incredible pain. So unfortunately, earlier this year, she woke up one morning with horrific pain, crying. She was living with my sister, and my sister hesitated to take her to the hospital because we're still in a pandemic, but the pain was too excruciating. So she brought my mother into the hospital. They did all sorts of tests. They thought it was a bone infection, but everything came back negative. So they realized the pain was just from the hardware. They called it RSD. So they gave her pain medication. They managed it, and she felt better. But unfortunately, from being in the bed for so many days, she declined and she deconditioned. So they wanted to have physical therapy come to the home to help her. And my sister has a lot of grandkids and her children coming in and out of the house, and she didn't feel comfortable having a physical therapist coming into the home because she has a bubble that she wanted to keep everyone safe. So she decided to allow my mom to go into a rehab facility, and my mom had been there in the past. So she went there. This was probably the second week in January. The good thing was she was able to get her COVID vaccine. So they did vaccinate her, so that was nice. But 2 weeks later, they called us, 3 weeks later, they called us to tell us that my mom had tested positive for COVID. So this facility, I believe, was testing everyone every week. And on the third week, my mom had COVID. So we wanted to know, how did this happen? They weren't allowing people into the facility. So obviously it was one of the staff members. I still wasn't comfortable with the fact that she was able to get COVID because they had assured us in the beginning that they had guidelines in place to protect individuals from getting COVID, and they had a designated unit for it, and this facility has 4 units. So once they told us that she had COVID, I was really concerned because my mom had had a stroke many years ago and she had left-sided weakness. And I knew she needed assistance. And I felt that putting her into isolation because of COVID, she would not get the care that she needed. So I asked if we could hire a companion. Initially, the director of nursing said, "Oh, I don't think we can." She thought it was a New York State law. I said, "No, I know that some people do have companions." And she said, "Well, if you can find a facility for me that's doing it, let me know." So I did. I searched over the weekend, and on Monday, someone called us. Well, my mother was diagnosed on Friday. That Monday, a facility called and said, "Yes, we do allow companions." They had rules. The family had to test the companion twice a week for COVID, and the family had to pay for the testing. And I said, "That's fine. Let me, give this information to the other facility." So I called the director of nursing that Monday and told her that, there's a sister organization a couple of miles away. They're doing it. I reached out to the Department of Health. They don't have any guidelines saying that you can't. It's up to the facility. I was told, "Oh, I spoke to the administrator. We're not going to allow it." And I said, "Well, I'm really concerned about the care that my mother is going to receive." can you guarantee me that her needs are going to be met? I said, we're coming into a snowstorm. I had a lot of concerns. You're going to be short-staffed. You're already probably short-staffed with COVID.
Right.
And she says, nope, we can handle it. That was on Monday. By that Wednesday, the LPN on the unit called my sister to tell her that my mom was acting out and that my mom was being mean. She threw her tray on the floor. So my sister was very upset that the nurse was describing my mother as a mean person. So she did a three-way. And when I got on the phone, I asked the LPN, what happened? And I wanted to know, did you assess her? Because if my mom is acting out, she's either in pain or something is wrong.
Yeah.
So for her to throw a tray, I'm thinking, what's going on in there?
Yeah. With her
And she
right side
said,
only, because she
right.
had left-sided weakness.
So I said, exactly. So I said, she might be in pain. Well, this was Wednesday night. It was probably around 8, 9 o'clock at night. Or not that late because it was a tray. So, but it could have been. Well, it was definitely towards the evening.
Right.
So after work, regular work hours for me. So the next day was Thursday, and I get a call from the supervisor asking for permission to start an IV because my mother is dehydrated. I was livid. How is my mom dehydrated? I said, when I spoke to the director of nursing on Monday, and I appreciated the fact that Saturday and Sunday, the weekend that, when she first was diagnosed as COVID, they allowed us to do Zoom calls. So we were able to FaceTime my mother. And both Saturday and Sunday, I said, Mom, is there anything that you need? And she said, just water. So the person who was doing the FaceTime, I said, can you please go and get my mother something to drink? And she says, well, I can't take off the equipment now because I have my mask and everything on. But she said, after the call, when I finish with the unit, I will go get your mom something to drink.
Okay.
And
And
it didn't
why was there
dawn on me,
water
like,
not?
wow, there's nothing in her room.
Right.
It didn't even dawn on me. But Sunday it did. And Sunday I said, my mom is an avid water drinker. My sister has to leave like a pitcher of water on her table during the day because my mother is constantly drinking water. And I said, the fact that you're telling me today's Sunday and you still don't have any, she said, has no water in the room. I said, that's an issue. Oh, I'm going to get it for her. Don't worry, I'll get it. That was the only thing she wanted. So Thursday, when they said she was dehydrated, my mindset was, my mother asked for water Saturday and Sunday, and now here it is Thursday. You're telling me she's grossly dehydrated and you want to put an IV in her. So when I got off the phone with them, I called the Department of Health and I lodged a complaint, not knowing that Friday, and respiratory wise, everything else, they said she was doing great. That Friday, we receive a call. We have to send your mom to the emergency room. Her sodium came back 167. Her mental status has declined. She's confused. She's out of it. My sisters and I, we were livid. It should not have happened. So I spoke to the ER doctor. They did admit her. They started her on treatment for COVID. And the following week, she just declined and it was downhill. 3 weeks later, she died.
And were you allowed to see her in the hospital either, or were they?
We were able to FaceTime 2 nights before she passed. The whole family, all her nieces, nephews, grandkids, all my nieces and nephews and her grandkids, we were all able to FaceTime, but one of my nephew wasn't able to make the call. So we did the call again. The nurse was just, I can't say enough about the nurse at the hospital. When I tell you, beyond compassionate, that my mom passed on Saturday morning. Thursday night, they allowed us to, because she was declining, they allowed us to FaceTime for about a half hour, if not 45 minutes. Everyone in the family was able to say something to my mom. The only request I had was, because there was my older sister and some of the grandkids did not want to see the vent or any of the equipment. So I said, can you please just put your camera on her eyes and her forehead, and that's it. Do not show the vent. That nurse held the phone, positioned it so we would only see my mother from here up for over a half hour. Never said, I have to go. You guys have to wrap this up. She stayed with us on the phone all that time. The next day, there was another nurse caring for my mom. My nephew was able to make the call. The nurse said, I apologize, but we can't do Zoom. The hospital uses some program and you'll have to download it. Well, there's some people in my family that not everyone's young.
Right.
So you say download an app and it's almost like you're speaking a different language. And
Right.
when you're already stressed, that would add another layer of stress, believe it or not.
Right.
And I just begged her. I said, please don't do that. I said, we did Zoom. Everyone knows how to use Zoom. Please. She says, well, I can't do that. The hospital said, you have to use this. And I said, but we did it last night. She says, well, I can't do that.
Yeah.
Thank goodness the nurse who was caring for my mom the day before, she was the charge nurse. And she said, don't worry, you can use my phone. So she allowed us to use her phone. And the nurse, again, she came in the room, held the phone again to my mother's face, allowed us to say goodbye. And my mother basically heard from everyone that night. It was like 10 o'clock at night by the time the call ended. And the next morning at 8 a.m., she passed.
Yeah. So this is it's a heartbreaking story, and certainly when you told me it's also very disturbing. So, but we do have some good messages and information that people need to know when they're faced with a situation where they might have to go into a skilled facility or a rehabilitation facility. So, you had said you need to know the rules and you need to know your rights.
You're right.
Right.
So
So let's talk about like number one thing people need to know before they put a loved one in a facility is
you have the right to ask that facility if you can have a companion. And if they say no, you can go to a different facility. You can let the hospital know, that discharge planner know that you want to put your loved one in a facility that allows for companions. Because
right.
when you cannot be there, you need to know that there's someone in that facility that is meeting the needs of your loved ones.
Right.
We're behind the scenes. We see what happens. We know what happens when there's a shortage of staffing. COVID took our country, the whole world, by surprise. We were underprepared, and it exposed a lot of leaks in the system.
Right.
And it exaggerated other leaks that were already there.
Right.
So for my mom, you combine a snowstorm on top of COVID, you know there's going to be shortages, staffing shortages.
Right. And then the
And
fact
some
that
of those
that's
needs are not going to get met.
right. And you and I had discussed, I don't think long-term care is your background, but it certainly is mine. And, the first issue is you have federal guidelines from CMS that dictate what facilities can do. And basically CMS has turned it over to individual states to make these decisions. But then you have the layer of individual corporations making decisions. And then you have the individual leadership in the facilities making decisions.
Yes.
But I think from what we've talked about, being aware that you need to ask this question, because the difference between allowing or having the ability to hire someone to provide the one-on-one care that your mom needed. So that's the first question that you need to ask. And then we talked about some other things too. You've mentioned the staffing issue. That's been an issue in facilities for a while, meeting minimum staffing patterns. And, I was actually talking to someone yesterday who works for a corporation, a long-term care corporation. And she was saying, that this that COVID has put such stress on the staff that even people that have worked there for 30 years are like, I'm out of here. Like this, I just can't do it anymore. And for someone to be put in that type of situation, to like the moral distress that they have to be under, when it's like we don't have the resources to provide care for these people, and and how are we going to fix this? And I think that COVID has cut off the ability for families to hire. I mean, you think about families, volunteers, being able to hire companions. I mean, that's a huge segment of help for staff that work there every day, and that's been completely eliminated. And my mom's, my grandmother's in the same situation. She's been there for a year, and I was telling somebody else this morning, I was like, we still have 1.5 million Americans in this country in solitary confinement because of COVID. Even though my grandmother's been vaccinated, she did get COVID, but she recovered. My mother's been vaccinated. And it's like, what's the deal? If they've been vaccinated, why would you not allow, her to go to my mom's room and be with my grandmother?
Right.
So to me, I think that's the frustrating part for me with this industry, is why are they still so far behind every other industry in reopening and allowing visitation?
Well, my gut is telling me because allowing people to come in would expose many facilities. The fact that they are understaffed, the fact that a lot of people quit, and when you think about it, who was really providing the most amount of care to residents? It's your aides, right? The unlicensed assistive personnel. They're the ones. They're the majority of the facility. It's almost like a pyramid shape. And at the bottom of the pyramid, the base, you have all of these nursing assistants. Then in the middle, you have LPNs. And at the top, you have a few RNs for facilities that have over 100 residents. How do you have one RN staffing the facility? It's
Right. Well,
ridiculous.
right. And that's a federal issue. If you are a skilled nursing facility, you are required to have one registered nurse on duty 24/7, one. And that's a lot. That's inadequate, in my opinion. That is my opinion. But you have the nursing assistants that do provide the bulk of the daily care, and they're the lowest paid. They're the group that doesn't have a career path. And they are also the ones, most likely dealing with taking care of, kids and families and that aren't in school. So and you can make more money working at McDonald's.
Yeah.
So why would you not do a job that's less labor intensive, less physically demanding? So it is a hot mess. So
It definitely is. And you
yeah,
see a
but
lot of facilities opening up, a lot of assisted care facilities opening up. So to me, if facilities are opening up, people are making money. You don't tend to open up a business to lose money.
right.
But is the care there? And out in New York, I reached out to our attorney general months ago and still have not received a call back. My county legislator, she called me back instantly. But to your point, it's a state issue. And our state, Letitia James, if you read the website about nursing homes and what she has uncovered, they are overwhelmed.
Right.
And again, we could have done this together. We could have created a better roadmap for taking care of our loved ones. But I
Right. And
felt
I
that
think
my
I think
facility
that's probably the
specifically,
key. Hmm?
the facility that my mom was in, they tied our hands behind our backs.
Right. And I think that's probably a lot of the issue too. When people don't know what to do, they tend to try not to do anything. And that's not going to be effective. I mean, they certainly didn't get the outcome that they wanted, you know. But I think that this issue of like the roadmap, and this has happened now. It's been going on for 14 months. I don't think this is the last pandemic or infectious disease that we're going to have to deal with in this country. And so we do need to create these roadmaps that say, if I mean, every other industry's done that. You look at colleges and universities, you look at daycares, like daycares are back open. Families, are taking and dropping off their kids. Why have we not figured out the roadmap for nursing homes to help them? And so to me, I think that's the most frustrating part is why has this one industry still not gotten that roadmap? Or if they had, why is there so much variation? So I think it's just buyer beware, consumer beware. There are usually checklists for how to determine how the quality of care that a facility can deliver. And I think most of that's gone out the window because COVID's changing everything. And but I do think these are important questions. I thank you for sharing your story. And these are the things you need to know. So any final thoughts before we finish up?
Know the rules, know your rights.
That's true. So very good advice. And thank you so much for being with me today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining me for this week's episode of This is Getting Old, Moving Towards an Age-Friendly World. You can find more episodes like this on my YouTube channel, Melissa B. PhD, and don't forget to subscribe. You can also visit my website, melissabphd.com, and check out the podcast and blog section because that's where I put all the hyperlinks and different things that we may talk about in any given episode. You can follow me on social media, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. And you can also find the audio version of the podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, and Amazon Music. So I hope this podcast gives you ideas of different things that we can do to move towards an age-friendly world, because when the world is age-friendly, it's friendly for everyone.